Okay, we will start the session in 2 minutes. Please wait. Okay, so let us start this webinar. Roboto Center is coming. Let us start this seminar. Thank you for coming today. I'm Shin'ichiro Matsuo, a research professor at Georgetown University and the acting co-chair of BGIN BGIN. I'd like to share my screen. Yes. So are you seeing the screen, my face, and
yes,
yeah, I think that's slide deck. Thank you very much. And let us start the webinar of today. So the goal of this webinar is doing an introduction of BGIN to, especially for that Bitcoin or blockchain, Bitcoin, Ethereum, and blockchain engineers. So I would like to have greater engagement with engineers. And so I would like to recommend all of you to mute yourself during my talk. Okay, so outline with this talk is, so firstly, I would like to talk about the background of this initiative. Then, I will explain that what BGIN is and the future plan roadmaps. Then this is the most important part of this talk, but so I would like to make a call for participation to this initiative. Yeah, this is a picture of that one academic conference called Financial Crypt. So this workshop, this conference started in 1997, but so originally the Cypherpunk started this workshop and conference, and so this community is quite near to the Bitcoin or blockchain communities, and so before Bitcoin, that creator of financial system was regulators and financial industries. But after Bitcoin, that engineers and research scientists on cryptography became a creator of financial systems. And this slide shows that roughly I categorize stakeholders in 4 categories. First is regulators, so the second is engineers, third category is business entity, and the last one is consumers. So we already have that 10 and more years after the invention of the Bitcoin, but the current situation is still messy because that we don't have any good collaboration and communication among stakeholders. For example, so regulator and engineers do not have enough communication and connection, communications with no common language, and it's very hard to regulate from regulators to engineers. And in many cases, engineers and cypherpunks do not want to talk with regulators. And the business entity or blockchain would like to start business before maturing technology in many cases. And the business entity want to avoid friction with regulations. And so regulators have difficulties in the difference in speed of business. And the consumers need transparency for the business provided by blockchain technology, but in many cases, there's no enough amount of or sufficient transparency of business based on blockchain technology. But so the reason why, so everyone, including engineers, business entity, blockchain business entity, and even government has much attention to blockchain technology. So the reason is this is a foundation of the permissionless innovation. This could empower all edge to create new innovation and ecosystem for financial things, and it could increase the number of potential innovators, and it could be a solution to innovation dilemma. And the internet is a great example of permissionless innovation. So before the internet, so for example, Minitel in France, Captain system in Japan, so that kind of communication system were provided by government. And if anyone would like to create a new services for communication, they need to reach out to government to start that business. But after the internet, so Cisco, Netscape, Yahoo, Google started new services based on the permissionless communication. Then so LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, the social networking services started over the web system, and Uber, Airbnb, and Grubhub, that is other so sharing economy happened over the social network and permissionless communication. So that kind of permissionless innovation abandoned ownership of communication channel and right of multilateral communication. And the routing and the BGP could be that good foundation of decentralized architecture, and that kind of unbundling facilitated produce of new services, business, and ecosystems and economy from grassroots. And the special things of the internet, what it's now still doing is that it is creating global space. This is not international. That global means that this is independent, but one space independent from government. And the internet made a global space, and it requested establishment of a new form of governance. That this figure is a famous figure by Lawrence Lessig, and it presented some new form of governance after the internet. And the internet changed the target to regulate from the communication regulators. And at the first era of the internet, the creator of the internet and internet pioneer, the good guy, everyone's good guy, and they didn't care about privacy and security issues. And after the internet, so when the internet was becoming that foundation of our social systems, these kind of issues, including privacy, cybersecurity, tax, IPR, and of course the GDPR is a kind of hot topic in Europe and globally. And but these issues happened after the global space happened in the area of the communication. And when we think the same thing for the financial technology and financial industry, the good news is we can produce new services we can not imagine now by connecting the internet and finance. But bad news is so regulators will face difficulties to enforce the current regulations. The target to regulate will change. Blockchain's autonomous system, anyone cannot stop that blockchain network. And of course, the anonymization technology will make difficulties for regulators. Anyway, so this is a new phenomenon in terms of financial stability caused by new mathematics from grassroots. And I'm not regulators, but so this is a textbook goals of financial regulators. So the first one is maintaining financial stability. The second one is protecting investors and consumers. The last one is preventing financial crimes. Of course, this is the main three goals of financial regulators, but it is also the public interest because that so we even cypherpunks, so they do not want to their unstable financial systems. They do. I think that they do not want to create a new crimes. Of course, they would like to protect investors and consumers. And I think these three goals are the public interest. So for everyone in this ecosystem. So as I told, so we need to consider the three things. So providing permissionless innovation. So we need to have that. We are having that grower space, and of course, as a public interest. So we need to care about that regulatory goals, and creating a healthy harmonization on the three items as a so important question for us. How we create that kind of harmonization. And so when we go back to the example of the internet, so the internet governance is one of the successful case having such kind of harmonization. So as I said at the first or second slide of my talk, so we need to have a common place for conversation, and we need to have common language. And of course that we need to incentivize all stakeholders to make such kind of harmonization. And we need to learn from the internet history. Currently ISOC, Internet Society, ITEF, ICANN, this kind of organization play a super important role to have healthy ecosystem of the internet. And this figure is a big picture of the current governance of the internet. So I intentionally write here that international and global. And at the beginning of the internet history, so government would like to govern the internet itself because the internet could reduce the power of governance. But after the many discussions among stakeholders, the most important part of governance of the internet was so it's now doing by these three organizations. Internet Society, this is a non-profit. I can manage the domain names and resources of the internet. This I can the non-profit organization too, and ITF is a standard, the body for the technology standard. And the government participating to these three organizations as one of stakeholders. And there is another organization like called IGF, Internet Governance Forum. So this is a multi-stakeholder conversation place, but this is a conversation place. And so this is one example of what the ITF doing. So ITF is a body for the technology standard, and they are creating tons of documents of technology standard. So this is one example of RFC, so for time stamping services. So, you know, the time stamping is one of the fundamental techniques of blockchain technology, and RFC 3161 is a one RFC for time stamping protocols. They are creating, so ITF is creating this kind of technology standard document by multi-stakeholders and the cooperation of engineers. So this is another example of RFC, of the automatic certificate management environment. So you can see that sequence diagram of protocols. So this kind of document is a good outcome of ITF. So everything reviewed by engineers, business entity, and in some cases, government or regulators could provide a comment and reaction to that document in the development of these kind of RFCs. Anyway, so collaboration by multi-stakeholder implies harmonization, that it could provide common understanding on regulatory goals and the technology goals. And of course, that code could be a part of law and order at this moment. And joint works among all stakeholders becomes so preventive action to any bad things we need to avoid. Another reason why we need multi-stakeholder collaboration is blockchain and DLT. Is by definition, it is there's multidisciplinary technology and foundations. We need to have much discussion from the background of computer science, cryptography, network, economics, law, etc. Then, so after understanding that, so we need a multi-stakeholder collaboration. But the most important things for us is having good conversation among regulators and engineers, because that is not easy things to have good collaboration among these two stakeholders. And we need to understand what the current regulators is doing. So this figure shows that current global structure, international structure of financial regulation. So G20 is a body for the financial stability. That G20 happened so after the financial crisis in 2008, 7 or 8. And G20, the main goal of G20 is for financial stability. And under the G20, so there are two bodies. The first is the Financial Stability Board, and it has a three sub organization for banking, insurance, and securities. And the other organization is the FATF, Financial Action Task Force, for mainly for the money laundering issues. And all the standard setting bodies work on blockchain and crypto assets related issues in some ways. And then, so June 6 last year, so Financial Stability Board, FSB, issued one interesting report on their decentralized financial technologies. So this report described about the financial stability, regulatory, and governance implications of DLT and P2P, and it set out the benefit and risks of increased use. And this report underscored the importance of multi-stakeholder dialogue. So, and after that, 3 days after that issuance of this report, G20 high-level seminar on financial innovation was held, and there is one session of named multi-stakeholder governance for decentralized financial system. So this panel discussion was held by multi-stakeholder. This is a good test case. Jun Murai, he is a one famous internet pioneer. Klaus Knut, he was a president of Dutch National Bank, and Adam Back, he's a famous cypherpunks and co-founder CEO of Blockstream. I participated as an academic blockchain researchers. Brad Carr, he's a senior director of IIF. This is a group of world banks. And this is a good example of multi-stakeholder discussion on some issue. And this slide shows that the item discussed at G20 seminar. The first one is also need for dialogue by multi-stakeholders. Then we discuss about what regulatory goals are. and future discussion area. As a future discussion area, so we discuss about financial inclusion based on blockchain, and additionally that mainly that Adam Back described about how technology excellent tool for achieving regulatory goals. And as a final item, so we discuss the future direction towards multi-stakeholder governance. And as a result of much discussion at G20 last year, we have historical sentences in the communique of G20. So G20, the group of government, welcomed that FSB report on decentralized financial technologies and the possible implications for financial stability, regulation, and governance, and how regulators can enhance the dialogue with a wider group of stakeholders. So this is a historical sentences because in general, so introducing multi-stakeholder governance might reduce the power of government. But so they recognize that importance of collaborating with engineers. And as a result of deep understanding of such kind of needs, that historical sentence was described in the communique of G20. And right after that, so we started a series of multi-stakeholder workshop. 4 days after that G20 meeting, we had a first meeting in Vancouver, supported by UBC. Then we have a series of workshops in Tokyo, Tel Aviv, London, Dublin, Malaysia, Palo Alto, New York, Tokyo again. So we had many discussions with including multi-stakeholders for some topics. So this is one example of such a multi-stakeholder discussion. This workshop named the Decentralized Finance Architecture Workshop in Tel Aviv, co-located with Scaling Bitcoin 2019. So we had 54 participants from regulators, researchers, financial service and blockchain business entity, developers, investors, and the media. And we had also good discussions on privacy issues, how we can secure the custody itself, and the problem of fat of travel. And so this is what we did last year and this year. So we had a G20 meeting June last year. After that, we have that series of workshop, especially in Tokyo, September 2019, including that so my Santa Maria, she was the head of Financial Advisory Ireland Ministry of Finance. So I'm from Blockstream, and David Farber from and Jim Rai and David Farber are the famous internet pioneer. So we discussed how multi-stakeholder discussion could have future healthy ecosystem of blockchain. And we had a workshop at Scaling Bitcoin and DevCon with Ethereum. And as a result of this series of efforts, so we declared that establishment of BGIN March this year. So this slide shows that this is a good one-page slide. So to explain what BGIN is, this is open and neutral sphere for all stakeholders to deepen common understanding and collaborate to address issues they face in order to attain sustainable development of blockchain community. And this is an open forum and an open space to gather all voice from all stakeholders, like ITEF for the internet. Anyone can make a contribution to BGIN, and anyone can make a pull request to that GitHub repository organized by BGIN. BGIN so holds online discussions and in-person meetings, hopefully. And so we have the style of lab consensus learning code. This is the same style of governance as ITF. And we will produce 3 types of document, like RFC of ITF. So they they include the technology specification guidance, operational specification guidance, and a document. And we have 3 tentative goals. The first is creating open, global, and neutral platform for multi-stakeholder dialogue. The second one is developing the common language and understanding among stakeholders with diverse perspectives. And the third one is building academic anchors through continuous provision of trustable document and code based on open source style approach. And this is the 5 key activities. The first one is I already talked that provide open, global, and neutral forum. And we already have the GitHub repository and mailing list for that kind of open discussion. Second one is, so we will host regular meetings and events, enhance dialogue and common understanding. In general, we would like to hold 3 or 4 in-person meetings per year. Unfortunately, in the current situation of the pandemic, we couldn't hold an in-person meeting. But instead of in-person meeting, so we will hold an online meeting. I think 3 or 4 times online meeting per year. And the third one is actively outreach to variety of stakeholders and work together with affiliated organizations to foster well-balanced discussions. And the fourth one is that this is the main outcomes of our initiative. This is creating the materials outcomes that influence the way people design, use, and manage blockchain DLT based on fair academic and technology-driven discussion within working group. And the final one is to contribute to public policy design and implementation through the constructive communication with global standard setters and the judicial, regulatory, supervisory, and enforcement authorities. And this is the 23 initial contributors. So we met online on March 9th, and we have 23 experts. And we agreed to establishment of BGIN at that time. And this 4 slides show that, so how we gathered multi-stakeholder with good balance. We have engineers, 3 engineers, Jeremy Rubin from Bitcoin Core engineers community. We have Danny Ryan from Israel Foundation. Yuji Suga, he's an engineer in Japan to work securing that cryptocurrency custody. And we have 3 regulators, government person from Japan and Ireland as initial contributors. But so we already have that another, so many other government person as a contributor to BGIN. So we have academic persons, faculty members, professors from diversified background. And we also have that blockchain business entity like cryptocurrency exchange. We have that so ordinary financial industry person. And we have another initial contributor from standard body, expert group, and the civil society. And additionally, we have 2 internet pioneers because we need to learn much from their internet pioneer on so how they struggling to create such kind of healthy governance systems. And the official start date of operation BGIN is November 23rd. We will hold the first BGIN meeting here at November 23rd, 24th, and 25th. And after, so we had a 8-month preparation phase. After this, we declared that establishment of BGIN in March this year. So I and my Santa Maria as an acting co-chair of the BGIN. We have 1 governance working group chaired by Shigeru Suzuki and Wright, and 1 study group on privacy identity management, chaired by Sakimura and Katarina Pistol. And we, in parallel, we are doing the community development activities like this webinar. We had a second online meeting in June, and we are continuously working on the creating terms of reference and the working item of BGIN after this November. And I would like to explain, and we would like to explain a little bit more about what we are doing now. And I will explain that about that study group of identity, privacy, and key management study group. And Arnold will explain about the governance working group as a acting co-chair. The study group of identity, privacy, and key management is aiming to explore possible approach of digital identity and access management using blockchain DLT for online resource access and examine identity, including keys, and access management in relation to blockchain-based financial services such as crypto assets, exchange, custodian, to give consideration to only reconcile conflicting needs between privacy preserving and traceability for regulatory enforcement, and to fill gap of knowledge of technology and foster common understanding on issues among stakeholders. And we are now doing a lot of work with using the common repository and Google Docs, and all stakeholders providing many contributions, comment, questions, contributions in the common space of working. And we have two work items. So the first is decentralized finance technology and privacy. We are now creating a document on the balance between innovation and meeting regulatory requirement on privacy, identity, traceability. And so the scope of this work is so thinking about the background issue and the issues report, and then so have that technical recommendation standard and the minimum supervisory expectations for financial applications. And we are aiming to provide high-level policy recommendations for FATF and relevant national AML CFT authorities. Of course, we are aiming to do the analysis and provide some document on privacy enhancing technologies. So we are now doing two types of work. So first is so doing a policy analysis first, and review on the relevant document published by FATF, SFD, CPMI, and in parallel, so we are thinking to do the technical analysis on payment channel technologies and the technology advancement in identity area, privacy enhancing technologies, so emerging decentralized financial technologies, so like liquidity pool, and decentralized custody, and other non-blockchain technological development. The anonymization technologies are the scope of this work. And after that, so we had we are thinking to provide technical and policy recommendation, including identification of the stakeholders' goal and challenge, doing gap analysis, and we'll provide analytical report on the problem to address through recommendation. And item 2 is providing guidelines for centralized and decentralized custody, including key lifecycle management of centralized and decentralized custodian for crypto assets. The scope is so providing model of a custodian system and providing information about the social impact which can be exerted by imperfect security measures of crypto asset custodian system, key life cycle model and its management, and incident response. This is an important thing for both for the business entity and the regulators, and identity management and AML and the relationship with part of travel routes important issue here. And we work on the same thing for decentralized custody. And here, so we need, this is an emerging area of this year, but so we are thinking to do the research and creating some document on the types of decentralized custodian, including decentralized network custodian like Liquid network. And this slide shows the implication to stakeholders. So engineer can obtain the requirement for key management and can have that standard key protection mechanisms. Regulator can know the point of audit and a guide to incident response. Business entity will have that agreed key management operation process and agreed identity management process and guide for incident response. The customer has a criteria to evaluate business entities. So this is the things of this study group. And I would like to pass the microphone to Aaron Wright to explain the governance working group. I will control that slide deck, Aaron.
Okay, great. And sorry, I can't join via video. I'm having an issue with my computer, but it's really nice to meet everybody. BGIN is a wonderful organization, and I think Shin'ichiro did a great job kind of providing an overview of the need for this organization and also the types of activity that at least we're initially contemplating for BGIN. And it's not just us, it's obviously a whole group of different folks from around the globe that are interested in making sure that public blockchains are well supported and can continue to grow. The governance working group is really focused on exactly that, which is governance, which is aiming to develop the appropriate governance mechanisms of BGIN itself. There's bi-weekly discussions if folks are interested in participating at those types of levels, where we're outlining and beginning to discuss things like organization, structure, IP, and any policies related to it. We've already put together a TOR of the working groups, which is available obviously in our repository. And there's a mailing list where you can learn a bit more. In many ways, we're building off of work and academic work, thinking about how governance can work in this ecosystem. So it's open-ended. We don't have all the answers. We wouldn't presume to have all the answers. We strongly believe that this should be consensus-driven, much like the underlying technology, and are trying to do our best to account for that, and to make sure that the way BGIN operates is similar to how BGIN to how the underlying blockchain technology operates as well. So I don't know if you want to go to the next slide. And the governance is beginning to take shape. So with that in mind, kind of leaning on ideas of achieving consensus, we have just begun to lay down at least some foundations for processes. And these processes are not focused on any creation of work product or anything along those lines, but more about if folks want to create a group, whether that's a study group or working group, there's a mechanism to do that. Also making sure that IP rights are kind of accounted for. In many ways, we're looking towards the work of the OpenID Foundation, which is obviously a tremendous organization, and building off and modifying some of their documents to make sure that everybody's stewarded in the right direction. Over the next several months, we're going to explore organizational questions. So there's no formal organization yet. We're debating and trying to understand whether or not that makes some sort of sense. But BGIN is started, it has begun, and these governance questions, while we think are important, they haven't stopped some of the great work in the other groups too. And our sense is that this will continue to evolve over the next upcoming weeks and months and hopefully years. And we'd love for folks to be a part of that. On the IP rights side, obviously much of almost all substantive blockchain technology is open source under various different copyleft or more permissive open source licenses. We want to make sure that if folks are together and are working on something, whether that or not that's a more formal specification or something less formal, that intellectual property rights are appropriately accounted for. We think that this is important just to ensure a collaborative environment, and we're exploring even ways to enable folks to participate with BGIN pseudonymously or anonymously. We think that's important too, particularly if given the nature of the technology and also given the fact that some folks may prefer that as their default way to contribute to certain organizations. So that will be accounted for both on the copyright side and also on the patent side as well.
Okay, thank you very much. And so this is so we need to think about that future roadmap and the core for roadmap items. So we are now studying that. So the one working group for governance of BGIN itself and the study group for the identity privacy and key management. But of course, we have another issue to be discussed by multi-stakeholders. So this slide shows just an example. So so other technical issues, we have that issues for our algorithm agility, vulnerability handling, and incident response. Of course, recently, so this is a hot topic that end-to-end end-to-end encryption. It could be that so one interesting discussion topic among government and engineers. Of course, the privacy enhancing technologies are also a big area for their future work. And of course, we have operational issues, part of travel rules. So I think that one of the biggest outcomes from BGIN is providing some proposal or counter proposal for the part of travel rule by stakeholders. And of course, we could have the relationship to other bodies like ISO, TC7, TC68, or IEEE. So we are open to any bodies to have a relationship. And this is the last part of this presentation, but this is the most important part. So we will have that first general meeting named block number 1. So this is virtually hosted in Mumbai, India, and will be held from November 23rd to 25th, 12 noon UTC to 3 p.m. UTC. And the goal of the block number 1 is setting up the common stage of multi-stakeholder discussion and establishment of organization and process of multi-stakeholder discussion for permissionless blockchain ecosystem. We have 3 days meetings. Each day has 3 hour sessions. So day 1, we have opening plenary and 4 tutorial talks from stakeholders. On day 2, we have 90-minute sessions for governance working group and 90-minute session for identity privacy and key management study group. On day 3, we have 2 additional tutorial talks from local blockchain communities, 1 sessions for the BGIN general issues and roadmaps. And we have the closing plenary as a last part of this meeting. And we already decided to have the block number 2 early March next year. We haven't decided the exact date of the block number 2, but it should be right after the Ethereum Community Conference 4 in Paris. So I don't know that, so we can do the meeting in person. We hoped, but so let us see what happened. And the additional things, we have academic workshop named Coordination of Decentralized Finance, Codex FIN 2021. This is the second one of this series and associated with financial cryptography. And this will be held on March 5th next year in Grenada. So right before the block number 2, we hope that we can have this workshop in person. But so we strongly expect that so we could have input from this workshop, so of the peer review discussion. And the scope of this workshop, mainly that associated with our discussion items at BGIN: key management of centralized decentralized custodian, decentralized financial technology and privacy identity traceability issues, reaction to FATF 12-month travel review, to achieve both regulatory goals and privacy. And we have one important issue, blockchain-based standard development mechanisms and process to accommodate multi-stakeholders. Of course, we have so many other issues. We are open to any topics related to the blockchain-based financial systems. And this is a basic and a big picture of that our development process. We have study groups to identify area of discussion and identify work items. And after we have the good scope of work, we have the working group to develop documents. We have the iteration of discussion inside the working group and edit document, then publish document. This is a basic structure of the BGIN operation. And this slide shows the benefits for stakeholders. So all stakeholders have a common understanding among stakeholders. This is one big goal of this BGIN. But for developers, so developers can jointly create regulation-friendly technologies and codes, and of course, the developers can provide influence to regulations and regulators. This is a big benefit for developers, and regulators can understand technology to solve regulatory issues, and the regulator can create regulatory environment that balances innovation and social needs. The business entity can input business requirements to the discussion, and they can obtain mature technology and codes agreed by regulators and engineers. And the user can obtain strong transparency of service. So we have many communication channels inside BGIN. We already established a website, and when we develop a document, we would like to mainly use a GitHub repository, but unfortunately, so GitHub repository is not good for government person at this moment. Of course, the government person need to learn about GitHub, how to use GitHub repository. At this moment, we in parallel we are using Google Docs for the collaborative work with government persons. So for international communication, we created 4 mailing lists, and we are now starting to use Zurip chat tools. And for announcement and public relations, we have Twitter account and LinkedIn pages. And this is the final slide of this talk, but the most important slide of this talk. So we strongly all engineers to participate these activities. And so to enroll to BGIN, so please register at the mailing list first, and the general mailing list subscriber to be invited to Zurip. And so anyone can access GitHub repository. So we welcome all participants from engineering community. And of course, we would like to make a call for participation for BGIN block number 1. And we, in parallel, we are now making call for agenda items or working group and study group, and calling for the tutorial speakers and roadmap items. So anyone can register yourself from website. Yeah, thank you for your listening, and I would like happy to take questions. I think we have that about 8 or 9 minutes for the question, and please feel free to ask any question. Thank you. Is there anyone who has any question on the presentation and this webinar? Okay, we have several comments in the chat screen. Okay, and so if there's any other comment or question, so I would like to close this webinar, but so this webinar is recorded, and so we will share that the contents at our website. So I will inform that URL of that video content soon. Then, so I would like to recommend you to circulate this information to your friends, your colleagues, and so I hope that as many engineers as possible, so we can include such kind of persons. But so Robert Shentoka, so do you have any question? Okay, is BGIN planning out any workshop, hackathon, competition for developers and other stakeholders, regulators? So that is a good question, that's a good suggestion. So we don't have any plan for such kind of things, but so please propose such kind of things. So we are very open to hold any kind of event or any kind of activities at BGIN. Thank you. Is there any other question? If no, so let us conclude this webinar. Thank you for joining today and have a great day ahead. Good night.
Thank you.